And welcome back to Russell Street Replay. As always, I'm your host, Nikhil Mehta, and Ronald Toothe is back with us. And excited to introduce my friend Thayjus, who will be joining us on the pod today. Guys, really excited to have you.
Oh, it's great to be here as always, man. How could you not be jazzed up this week? Football is back.
Football is back. Trey Mancini hit an inside the park home run. Gotta rep the Orioles a little bit.
Love that. Love that.
Brought me almost to tears at work, but
brought me two tears. So yeah, no, we were. Whew, what a day.
I'm so glad you guys got to enjoy that.
We'll stick with awesome. Football. The not heard Red Sox fan Ron over here. But I mean, Ron, you kind of hinted at it. Like, football's back. All these guys are in the building. They're at the castle. And so I guess kind of on a less talking ball perspective, like, what does football being back mean to you?
Well, for me personally, it's so much more than like football. And just to go on a bit of a side tangent, it's just the best time of year in general. I mean, like, I'm one of the biggest fall guys that you're ever going to meet. The pumpkin coffees and the weather changing and the leaves and all this stuff. It's all signaling like just the best time of year. But just from a football perspective, it's a time to like start anew. You know what I mean? With the exception of last year, most times everyone's healthy, everyone's excited, everyone's got a clean slate, and it's really just a time to begin anew for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, football's always, that football is always kind of equated with fall to me and like the end of summer, but in a good way. Like you think of the end of summer, you're like, oh my God, like fall and back to school. But for me, that's always been, no, we're back to football. And especially after a year of doing this, I'm even more excited to, get out there and go to camp and, be like, yeah, this guy's going to make the team. This guy's not. Here's who's going to start. Here's who's not. And really like have an exciting team really, on paper. And again, like you said, the injuries are always part of it, but on paper, really, really exciting, deep team. Only shallow at like a few not even key, I would say, at a few positions. And that's almost intentional at this point. So can't even really complain about it. How does it feel to have football back?
Oh, first of all, you're a brave man for implying that either the Ravens are thick per se at wide receiver, or you're saying wide receiver is not essential. And either way, you're going to get some really hateful comments for that one. So I'm really sorry for you.
My head kind of turned when you said that.
But honestly, it's just really nice. And I realize I'm going on a podcast and saying this, but I'm personally really looking forward to the characters and the storylines, not just the Ravens, but kind of, across the NFL. And I think one of the things that social media and the internet in the past like 10 years have done is make it, with the NFL's help, of course, to make it like a year-long thing, or try to make football a year-long thing with the machine happening. We spend 3 months waiting for the draft. It's just a continuous news cycle, and I'm personally really excited to kind of take a deep breath and just kind of get down to it and kind of see all these things that we've all talked about, partially to an exhausting level, kind of come to fruition.
Yeah, actually have some ball in front of us to like break down. Like Ron, I'm sure you feel the same way at a certain point. I feel like we do a good job keeping these fresh and fun, but at the same time, we have to actually during the offseason, you have to really work to come up with new things and not just be like the Ravens are going back to 2019 with tight ends and running the ball, baby. Like that was like the first thing that we said on the pod after the draft, I think. Maybe even during free agency. I'm not even sure. But
yeah, we took what, like a month off, and we were still, by the time we were getting towards training camp here, it's like, all right, let's just do drafts because it's fun and it's pretty much all there is to talk about right now. You can only talk about Lamar's contract and all this stuff so much, even though my tweet riled a bunch of people up today, but that's neither here nor there.
Like, I don't have to imagine anymore. Sorry for interrupting you, but I don't have to imagine anymore, like all these different things. Like, I don't have to imagine what Greg Roman's play calling looks like in this. What are the other Ravens ones? I don't have to imagine if Lamar Jackson is going to hold out and hates the Ravens and all this nonsense. Like, I don't have to, like, we know we have clarity on so many things. We're able to just see things with our eyes in front of us. And that's just such an underrated thing to be able to just have instead of the speculation that runs rampant for so long.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. But you mentioned Lamar, and we would be remiss as a Ravens pod to not at least talk about Lamar. And I don't want to get into the contract side too much. I think, briefly talked about it last week. Kyler Murray's big deal. Seems like negotiations with Lamar are ongoing, and he seems pretty hopeful the deal is going to get done. I'm very much in the camp of, that's great. I guess we'll just kind of see. I'm just not really stressed about it anymore. And if it happens, it happens. If not, they'll figure it out. I have no doubt about this team, figuring it out. I guess what I'm more curious about is from Lamar is what are you looking for in training camp? When you're watching, it's tough, obviously, to see a lot of clips. Obviously you want him to stay healthy. But with his arm, one thing I think I'm really looking for is timing. I think that's a big area where I want him to step up is in the timing of these routes. And you feel like a guy like Bateman, who's a very precise route runner, can get a lot of these timing routes done really very sharp with Lamar if he develops that connection. So I think that's definitely one thing I'm looking for. What about you guys?
Well, me personally, it surprisingly has nothing to do with his on the field play. I'm very confident that his deep ball is going to continue to get better. All this stuff that you hear about, that's not what I'm worried about. And not to say that I am worried about this thing, but I'm excited to see more progression just from that poise and leadership role. Everyone had something to say in June when he wasn't showing up to the voluntary OTAs, and whether that was warranted or not, you can make your own decisions. I would probably say no, but he showed up to mandatory camp a few days early. That was really nice to see, but he's coming into this year with by far his most inexperienced receiving core ever. I mean, it's not to say it's the least talented. It's just, it's Rashad Bateman and a bunch of guys who haven't really had a chance yet. So the running back room too, you think we have Dobbins and Edwards, two guys coming off of injuries, and then two guys he's never played with before, a rookie center among some other reshuffling on the offensive line. Like there's still going to be those, the Mark Andrews and the Pat Ricards, those kind of guys there to help keep that sort of even, pace. But I guess I just kind of like to see him continue to step up and become more of that leader, like we've seen him kind of start to do over the last couple of years. And that's not to say being a Ray Lewis, rah-rah. We never got that from Joe Flacco, and I don't think we're ever going to get that from Lamar Jackson either. But just little things like continuing to work with the receivers after practice, holding other guys accountable, things like that.
You say – go ahead, Thayjus.
Oh, no, sorry. I was going to say one of those things that you really hit on is kind of not the rah-rah, but also kind of have to show that leadership. And I think it's more so kind of show that leadership within the offense as well. And kind of that applies, and that these aren't things that are his fault, but I want to see a reduction in the number of, oh my God, let's get to the line of scrimmage. We don't know. Does everyone know what the play is? Does this, that, and the other, who's running the wrong route? No, those things aren't his fault, but at the end of the day, you are the quarterback of an NFL offense, and you got to make sure your soldiers have their ducks in a row. With regards to what you meant on the field, though, Nick, I think it's a really interesting point to make with timing, because I think I've heard the argument, and I think Ravens Twitter especially has a lot of love, understandably so, for Lamar Jackson. I love Lamar Jackson, but you kind of don't want to you want everything. Lamar Jackson has done no wrong to some people, and the timing is off. It's because the line's getting blown up every day. Alejandro Villanueva should be sent to the gulags for all eternity for making Lamar Jackson have to dare speed up his processing. But at the end of the day,
is this you or is this the Ravens fans you're talking about?
Oh, these are just Ravens fans. I'm a David Sharp stan. We know that. David Sharp till I die. But
wow, that might be the first recorded David Sharp stan in history.
I like it.
I respect it. Oh yeah.
But he was not the hero we needed, the hero we deserved. But I think at the end of the day, with regard, it's really easy to say the line did it, but Lamar Jackson was also late on some throws. He had time, and he did the most frustrating thing where if you saw another quarterback do it, you'd think it's a pump fake, but it was not a pump fake. It was he was kind of hesitating a little bit.
Yeah, it's should I?
Yeah. And I think even in games where the first half of the season where things were rolling, even in the Chargers game, I can remember an interception across the middle where he had Mark Andrews on the cross, and he just yanked it a little bit, and then he tried to force it in there at the end. And Mark Andrews obviously wasn't open anymore, and the defender closed, made the play. And that's not an offensive line thing. You have to trust the receivers, you have to trust the play especially, and just feel comfortable in that offense. And I'm really looking for the growth with this offense, in particular, especially because it is the same offensive coordinator. Leaving that debate aside, there is continuity, and I want to see the benefits of that continuity.
Yeah, you touched on a number of things there. One, when it comes to trusting, trust your receivers, trust the offense you're in, trust yourself as well. Trust yourself to make the right read and make the pass, because it's weird. Lamar's a really confident player. He plays very confidently, but you do see that hesitation from him. And so you're hoping when, he feels like he has more trust, you're hoping it's an issue of, shoot, like, I got guys bearing down on me, O-line issues, than it is him not trusting his reads and his throws, because I think that would be a much bigger issue. I think the other thing is some of these problems you say, getting up to the line, making the right reads and throwing, like those are things he can solve. He can work on himself and he can take the reins on. That's where that leadership and accountability comes in. I mean, the offense is built around him. And in a way, the way it is right now, he kind of has to bring it all together. That's his role. And I think he has to do a little bit more active of a role in doing that this year with, a lot of turnover. I think, Proshi barely played last year. There's a lot of hype for James Proshi, and I am absolutely on that train, but he didn't play that much last year. So him and Duvernay have to build up, and Wallace have got to build up.
Tylan Wallace had 2 catches.
Yeah. You got to build up that chemistry with Lamar early in camp, in the preseason, and be working. I'm not worried about him developing with Bateman. That seems like it's already well on its way, and he obviously has to with Andrews. And then the other thing is ball placement, right? Sometimes it feels like he's trying to aim it a little too much, almost like he's getting a little cutesy with it. And again, I'm not a quarterback expert, so I could be totally off with this, but it seems like on his interceptions, it is either kind of the hesitation issue or it is a trying to fit the ball in a very specific spot where he doesn't necessarily need to. And I think that comes back to trusting himself a little bit. I think we've talked about this a lot on the pod, this idea. It's something we talked about with Patrick Queen a ton last year. And then we saw the improvement from him. Trust yourself. You got your world-class athletes. You have, football players are big, like athletic dudes, and so they have this, big and dumb. No, football players are some of the smartest people out there. They have to make all sorts of crazy reads and react to things very quickly, and they have to trust themselves. And I think what we're hitting on is Lamar has to trust himself too, to be, maybe the best football player in the game right now, just from a pure ball standpoint. And he's got to trust himself to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And we've seen the team kind of, to your point about his ball placement, things like that. We saw the video today from camp that Jonas Schaefer, I believe, posted. They were working with the tight ends and doing the back shoulder throws. It seems like the team is kind of right on that same track that you're on. They're looking to improve that. That will improve the hesitancy as well as that kind of specific pinpoint ball placement that everybody seems to say he doesn't have.
Yeah, Duvernay had that beautiful back shoulder catch for a touchdown. I think it was one of the highlights the Ravens posted. And you think about that timing and that chemistry, that doesn't work if Duvernay is not breaking down his route and turning around at just the right time as Lamar's releasing the ball. And you just have to be on with those. And I think, there was that thing in The Athletic about the quote about Lamar Jackson. I'm not even going to touch the MVP thing because obviously that was stupid. It was Jack Del Rio being
definitely 1,000% Jack.
Minus
sore little loser.
That was Jack Del Rio,
who's not a good coach.
Plus 10,000 in the odds.
Let's not rule out Fangio. Let's not rule out Fangio.
That's true. Fangio is a dark horse for that. But the thing they said about Mahomes, about how he's like a one-read quarterback. I'm like, yeah, because his first read, he hits it in perfect timing. He doesn't need that many more reads, especially with Kelsey. It's first read, find Kelsey or Hill. Now he doesn't have Hill, but now it's fine. A lot of times Kelsey doesn't have any assigned route in the play, and the Ravens have started to do that with Mark Andrews, and you see that chemistry work so well. Now, if he's able to develop that kind of timing and chemistry with at least one other receiver on this roster, you could argue, I think it's safe to say he had it to a certain extent with Hollywood. But if he develops with Bateman, who is a much more talented receiver, then the options are way more open than out route or deep route or go route. Those are the two things that he had on lock with Hollywood, right? Like maybe one of the best, if you pick any quarterback, wide receiver, and 2 routes in the league, I might pick Lamar Jackson and Hollywood Brown's out and go routes. But that was it. And defenders knew that.
When he'd actually catch it.
But defenders knew that, and they keyed on it. They pushed him to the boundary. They went right back to what they did. Sorry?
Who said the famous line, you got to watch 15 and 89?
One of the Bengals guys. I forget who. Yeah. Was it Jesse Bates? Yeah. No, I don't think so, actually. No, it was that no-name guy, because remember he was chirping all the Ravens fans before we played them again, and we beat them 52 to -4.
Whatever the semantics are, the point still stands of that,
Fun
like
to
you said,
remember,
Nick, kind of expanding on that trust beyond Mark Andrews. If Lamar Jackson does throw a pass to Mark Andrews in training camp, I could care less. I genuinely could care less. I know
Yeah.
that they can complete that seam route and that crosser blindfolded come week 1.
The post, the owl. I mean, they've got
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing. They've got way more in their bag, and I think Bateman's going to have a lot more in his bag. It just depends on what leaps, and it's tough because you love these guys, you like what you see. It just depends on what leaps Proshi and Duvernay and Wallace can make, and kind of where we are. I mean, at a certain point, I'm kind of just comfortable sitting in that and letting it play out. I think one situation that I think is actually maybe a little bit even more interesting than the wide receivers, because wide receiver, we kind of know how it's going to play out. It's going to be Bateman, and then it's going to be a rotation of the other guys, and Isaiah likely is going to get thrown in the slot. Cool. I'm fine to see how that works with our offense. What I don't know is the backfield, because we don't have a super strong history of backfield by committee when it comes to 3. I feel like it's usually 2, but it's going to be kind of weird this year because we don't know if Dobbins or Edwards are going to be ready. Even if they are back week 1, we're not going to have them take on a bell cow role. And then it's a question of who else do you throw in as in a run heavy offense. Even the third running back is kind of a featured back. And so, I'm curious to see how you guys think the backfield will shake out, right? Because they signed Corey Clement the other day, already signed Mike Davis, drafted Tyler Beatty. You got Justice Hill coming off his Achilles. Nate McCrary still hanging around. Those are the guys that are going to be really competing really, really in a tight competition for roster spots and early carries in the season, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I said in our last pod that I didn't think J.K. Dobbins would exceed 15 carries in a game until at least midway through the season. And I'm kind of like staying steadfast in that. I still believe that to be true. And I kind of think the same thing for Edwards. Edwards is a little different because his injury was less severe than JK's in terms of, I think JK had the MCL and all the other CLs. So his was a little more extensive, but I'm hesitant to say it, but I heard something today from somebody that I would kind of that I would take as a credible source, who said that there's like been some frustration from Dobbins in terms of like not being cleared yet and stuff like that. So there's a lot of question marks going on there overall. So it's probably going to be the Mike Davis and Tyler Beatty show to start out. And I mean, when you look at the first month of the season, like in no specific order, we have the Jets. They were bottom of the pack last year in terms of the rushing game. There's Miami and Buffalo, who were 13 and 14. So they're middle of the pack, nothing crazy. And then New England's 20. Or 22nd.
Exploitable.
20,
Exploitable.
Yeah. So whoever is going to get the carries in this offense is probably going to succeed behind a revamped offensive line. So I'm not too concerned about it, even though there's so many question marks in terms of who the lion's share of the carries are going to go to.
Well, I think I'm personally most interested in who's the third down back, who is the 3rd and 7 back, who is going to be the safety blanket for Lamar Jackson to provide him that comfort I don't think he's ever truly had, who is going to be the best pass blocker. And the only conclusion I have is I think Mike Davis may have been brought in for more than just as a training camp body. Mike Davis took over the Christian McCaffrey role when Christian McCaffrey got injured. Mike Davis, I want to say, earned something like 6 targets a game, somewhere around 5 or 6 targets a game.
Mike Davis is the next Christian McCaffrey. You heard it here first.
Well, if you asked me 1 year ago today, I thought Mike Davis on the Falcons was the easiest fantasy football sleeper, and that is why.
Oh, yeah, me too. And then Cordero Patterson was like, what position?
Yeah, exactly. But I think Mike Davis, I think if you don't like Mike Davis, you're in for a rude awakening, because I think that I think Mike Davis is the 3rd and long back. I think that Corey Clement is the training camp body.
Yeah.
And I don't think Mike Davis is nothing. Corey Clement, fine. No. It's just because a health thing. But
I could see Mike Davis having kind of like a little bit of a Justin Forsett kind of thing here. I'm gonna be honest with you. He's got a lot left in the tank, I think. And to be in an offense like the Ravens, it could be a shot in the arm to his career.
Yeah, so he's 29, and one of the nice things about that is the experience he has. He's historically done better in gap power rushing schemes like we have. The other thing is he's never really been the featured back the number one guy at any one point. He has taken on that role on a game-to-game basis when needed, but never like, okay, Mike, this is your year. This is your 1,000-yard year. And so he doesn't have as much. There's plenty of tread on those tires, and that's one good thing. And again, that veteran savvy and pass protection when you're trying to make a play on a 3rd and long and go catch the ball. I will say Batty has a good rep out of Missouri for being an excellent pass catching back out of the backfield. Maybe he's a little smaller, so he may not be the pass protecting guy that you want compared to Davis, but I do think he'll be a threat on 3rd downs as well. And I think the Ravens' goal is to kind of have redundancies, have guys like, instead of having a power goal line back and a 3rd down back, you get a couple guys who can play a couple different roles, and that way just you're covered for fatigue, you're covered for game-to-game injuries. But I do think you're right in terms of like Mike Davis is going to, I think, have a big role in the offense to start, because you could trust him to just take the ball and run. I think he has 6 fumbles and 550 career carries, which is pretty dang good to me. I don't know exactly if that's like an amazing stat compared to a lot of running backs, but it's just looking at her, hearing the numbers, like I feel comfortable with that. I feel comfortable with him having a big role early on.
More
especially
than Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah. Like I just think he will hit those holes harder. He will churn. Isn't he part of like the quad club or whatever AJ Dillon started? Like
He's in the quad club.
Yeah. And so
am I thinking that he can be a pass catcher just off that photo alone? Yes. Do I hope it works out because of that? Sure.
Yeah, but like you said, he's got like that experience where like in Carolina, it was like, okay, well, this isn't necessarily your forte, but our offense calls for running back to go run routes and catch the ball. So figure it out. And, he wasn't, he obviously wasn't Christian McCaffrey or Kamara or anything, but he did well. And so I think that I think he'll play a big role. I think they like Beatty. I'm just curious to see how much they put on him from the get-go. The other thing is Justice Hill is like that X factor. This team likes Justice Hill. Justice Hill's worked his ass off for this team. And if he's all the way back from his Achilles, then he'll be in the mix too. He'll be in the competition, and it'll be a matter of which of Dobbins or Edwards are healthy to start the year. I think it's possible there's 1 on PUP to start the year and 4, and they carry. I think it's probably Gus, Beatty, Davis, and Hill to start the year. And then they flex one of them. My guess would be probably Hill down to the practice squad when Dobbins gets back.
You really think? You think they would have, like, if they were that confident, would they have even bothered signing Corey Clement and taking up the roster spot?
I mean, you just need camp bodies at a certain point.
They have 6. Like I was about to bring this
Ricky Person from I think NC State. They're supposed to have another free agent undrafted rookie running back, and I don't think he reported.
That's right.
So I think that's part of
he was like, "Nah, football's not for me no more," or something like that.
Yeah,
Nikhil, you brought up a really interesting point. Sorry, go ahead. We got J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Mike Davis, Justice Hill, Tyler Beatty, Corey Clement. Pick 3, 4, maybe. So Corey Clement, I think is safe to say gone. Corey Clement's safe to say gone, and I think you're right. Where J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards one of them starts on PUP.
Yeah, and this is not like a slight to Dobbins. Like Dobbins has worked his butt off. I have seen videos of him looking really good. Things I've heard out of camp are basically like the Ravens are almost having to be like, you literally legally cannot play because of like your designation right now. Like they have had to been like, dude, you can't suit up, you can't go join them. Like he wants to, and so
he's not happy about it.
And I like that, but that also is like it just has me like, dude, it is training camp. You're not playing in the preseason. Like get yourself right. Like we know your talent. We trust you to be great. We trust you to have the season everyone's expecting, the season you were supposed to have last year, but make sure you get right first because, obviously the worst thing that could possibly happen would be him to aggravate the injury, for him to come back too soon. The Ravens, I think, ideally, knocking on wood, again, I think they've learned their lesson with that, and I think they are going to be cautious about, I don't care if you're at 85, 90%, 92%, you're ready to play. I want you to be as close to 100% as you can be before I put you out on that field with a bunch of guys coming at you.
Far be it for me to sorry, 1 second. Far be it for me to be the guy that's going to, comment on J.K. Dobbins' injuries or, just anything dealing with his personal body. I don't want to overstep that. But there was a video that came out today of him catching a pass and sort of turning and cutting upfield. and it very much looked from an outsider perspective like a 75% player right now, compared to what he normally is, of how great he is at 100%.
My thing with J.K. Dobbins is, and J.K. Dobbins, if by the grace of God you watch this, just want you to know, please don't come at me on Twitter. Like, I promise you, this comes from a place of love, my brother. J.K. Dobbins, how did you get hurt in the first place? Please just remember, how did you get hurt in the first place?
Yeah, he doesn't need to be out there.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be out there in the preseason. I mean,
I'm happy at the Huspa, at the John Harbaugh, we take every rep seriously attitude, but sir, I know what you are. I know how you're that dude. Please be that dude and just enjoy yourself. Find a new video game. Go pre-order Madden or something. Like, take some time. I don't care.
Hey, no
play
free
with yourself. I almost said play with yourself in Madden, but it's like that can get a little.
Yeah, I don't think they added that feature yet, buddy.
No.
Yeah, VR is getting out of control, man.
Christ. No, but I do think you're right. Like, again, and this isn't like a slight towards like the guys like Clement, McCrary, certainly not towards Davis or Beatty or Hill. Like, those are the guys that need to be out there in the preseason anyway. Hill needs to make sure he's still got the speed that is basically the main reason that he's even useful anyway. That he's speedy because he can get to the outside in special teams and stuff like that, or on runs, and he can play special teams. Davis and Beatty need to get integrated in the offense. We got to see what we have from them. Same thing with McCurry and Corey Clement. I don't know what I need to see from J.K. Dobbins. Isn't like, okay, here's 15 touches a game. Go 15 touches. You'll probably get 100 yards out of that. That's all I need. And so I love the competitive fire. I think it's something you see on a lot of these guys in the team on the team. But yeah, JK's he's got to take it easy. Moving to the other side of the ball, I think another interesting thing is going to be the rotation on the defensive line. Partially because I'm curious to see what kind of fronts Mike McDonald throws out there. He's known for having a very multiple approach, very varied approach to his defenses. And he's kind of got some of the personnel to do that. He's got guys like Matabuke who could play, 3-tech or, 3-tech, potentially 5-tech in a 4-3 if he wants to line up some that way. You've got guys like Campbell who can line up on the interior or as a defensive end. I'm just curious to see. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of rotation. You got the big boys in Michael Pierce and Travis Jones. They're going to be rotating. Campbell's a little older. He's going to be rotating. Justin Matabuke, Broderick Washington, a couple. I'm trying to think of the other interior linemen that are really going to have to come in and make an impact. Brent Urban. Yes. Brent Urban's the main other one I was thinking is in terms of him and Broderick Washington being probably the first man up when it comes to the defensive end position. You're going to need to see them make plays, and they're going to get some pass rushing opportunities too. I don't think as much as we'd love to see Travis Jones be an immediate bully in terms of pass rushing in the NFL, I think that's tough. And I think Campbell and Matabuke will be out there a lot, but they can't be every down, especially not Campbell. And I think that's where, guys like Urban and Broderick Washington, I'm hoping they're going to be like, all right, you know what? I've got my 20 snaps a game. 10 of them are coming on 3rd and long. I'm going to give all my juice on those snaps and just try and get to the quarterback.
Well, you kind of took the words out of my mouth there.
Go ahead, Thayjus.
The player I'm most looking forward to in preseason, and the one I want to hear the most about, is Travis Jones. I am so excited to see what the talent of Travis Jones can do, predominantly with interior pass rush. I think it's something that the Ravens haven't gotten a lot out of. I think we can all agree that the great defensive line rebuild after Derrick Henry ripped it apart in 2019 happened, and for all intents and purposes, that was a run defense overhaul. That was not especially on the interior, that was not a pass rush overhaul. And I think at times they've been lacking that interior pass rush, collapsing the pocket from the front and allowing your edges, your speed rushers, your OA, hopefully your Ojabo, contract and injury aside, that freedom and that space to come off the edge. And I just really want to see not a dominant, because that's Aaron Donald, but like a consistent threat, at least from the pass rush in the A gap and either B gap from Travis Jones. I think he's the player with the skill set who can most do that. I don't think that's Michael Pierce, for all romanticisms of his reunion aside. Calais Campbell is, I think it's unfair to ask a 73-year-old man to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Calais Campbell will come after you if you call him a 73-year-old man. I'm just saying.
He might, although he didn't get mad at me for the impression I did of him a few weeks ago. So who knows?
Fair enough.
But
if I look half as good as Calais Campbell, if I look at half as good as Calais Campbell does at 73, then when I'm 36, like I'll be happy. So.
Well, you guys covered it pretty well. For me, it seems pretty cut and dry in that it's going to be Matabuke and Campbell as kind of the guys on the ends there. And really the only debate that I think is out is whether it's going to be Pierce or Travis Jones as to who gets the majority of the snaps, even if they don't actually start. Like I could totally see a scenario where Michael Pierce just gets to be the starter because he's the veteran. And meanwhile, Travis Jones is out snapping him like 60-40. So that's really the only interesting thing, or not interesting, but just the only thing that's really like up for debate in terms of how that rotation is going to go. For me, the interest comes on the edge, though. You know, we've got Owe, Bowser. He's looked great, but he's a question mark kind of as it stands right now. Is he going to be 100% from that Achilles injury in week 1? Besides that, it's Houston and then Ajabo, who hasn't even signed his contract yet, but that's a whole other different discussion. That'll get done, obviously. But they're thin there. I mean, we talked about the positions that they are thin at before. This is absolutely one of them. They restructured Marlon Humphrey earlier this week. Does that mean that they're going to go out and try to go grab that, JPP that we were not to kind of give a sneak preview of our next segment here, but are they going to go out and get one of those guys and add some depth? Because as it stands now, it's very thin. And just looking at this team, my guess would be if they don't achieve the goals that they want to achieve this year, it will probably be due to a lack of a pass rush, if there's a reason.
Yeah, I think, okay, so one thing on Ajaba's contract, I'm a little of a contracts nerd. So from what I know of Ajaba's contract, it's like 2 things. One, the fact that he was injured and was supposed to be drafted in the first round. That part is part of the reason why he wants a bigger signing bonus, not helped by the fact that the big gulf in the second round is between the guy in front of him and the guy after him in terms of their bonuses. I think there's like a maybe $300,000 gulf in between picks, 44 and 46. And so he wants to be closer to 44. The Ravens want him to be closer to 46, the bonus amounts. And he does have a point when it comes to, hey, I should have gone the first round, gotten a fully guaranteed deal, gotten a big bonus. And so I think odds are part of the reason, the Ravens needed to restructure Marlon to open up the room for him. So I think that deal will definitely get done. I just think it's kind of, hey, we don't need you right away at training camp. We don't have the money to pay you right now. Let's get the rest of our rookies signed. Let's get whatever vets like Mike Davis, Fuller, we want to bring in June, July. Let's get them in the building. Let's get them in Baltimore, because it's not like Ojaba's not going to sign and play for the Ravens. I mean, this is literally, I'd be fairly sure this is like his number 1 preferred destination. It's reuniting with Mike McDonald. It's reuniting him with
playing for the Ravens of his best friend. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so there is no concern there, but it is kind of interesting from a contracts perspective how this worked out with like him being the later one to sign, kind of a perfect storm of events that leads to this happening. But anything from anyone who knows the team is just not worried about it. They're not sweating it.
No.
Otherwise, on the edge, I think the real question is, what is a good season from Dalen Hayes? If a good season from Dalen Hayes is 4 to 6 sacks, that I think that we might be able to stay afloat until Bowser and Ojabo come back. But if he's only able to, notch a couple pressures a game, he's not getting home on sacks, he only gets 2 or 3, then I think we are, at least for the first half of the season, going to be really, really hurting for pass rush. As good as Owe is, as good as Houston was last year, and Houston does not get enough flowers for how well he played last year. I just thought he was fantastic the entire season, in a lot bigger role than I expected him to be in, to be honest. And it's just like the pass rushers just kind of got to stay afloat. You got to hope you can get enough out of your Dalen Hayes, and that you're not dipping too far into the Vince Beagle, Steven Meanswell, because if they're getting, anything resembling consistent pass rushing snaps off the edge, I think that's trouble, because those are guys who just don't have the career stats and they have the experience, but nothing to really back it up otherwise. And so you're hoping that Hayes can be good, but he's also going to be, I think, pressed into that Tyus Bowser Sam role a little bit as well, where he's going to be asked to do a couple things. So I agree, Rod. I think the edge is going to be the toughest thing to start the season. I don't know if there's any answer on the roster that really gives it to you, other than just hoping that OA has that breakout year.
I think what I want to see most, and Nikhil knows exactly where I'm going to go with this in a second, because he's heard this rant 10,001 times now ever since Wink Martindale said his famous "sacks don't matter" line. But I just want to see finishing. I want to see your ability to tackle Josh Allen early in this season and bring him to the ground, and not let Josh Allen run around all over the place or run for 20 yards. I don't care if it's a pressure that Josh Allen gets out of and runs for 8 yards. That's not a good play. Like, I know, like, PFF may grade it a good play, and I'm not saying that, like, that player should have done better there, but as a unit, as a collective defensive line, I want to see them be able to bring the quarterback down. I think that they've really struggled with finishing ever since they let their quote-unquote sack masters go and never really replaced predominantly Suggs, but more so Judon towards the end. But I just want to see the ability, especially in the rise of the mobile quarterback era, the ability to bring the quarterback down. I think they're built really well as an entire defensive unit against the Bucs or against the Packers, with a team with a more stationary target. But I don't if the Ravens offense ever played the Ravens defense in a meaningful game, Lamar Jackson would rush for 400 yards. Like, they would not be able to catch him. And I just want to see the ability to take better angles to the quarterback, contain better, especially when the quarterback rolls out to their throwing sidearm, and just really be able to finish there.
Yeah, and I think that closing is one of the things we missed last season. And it shows up, I think, in turnovers more than anywhere else. You're not getting strip sacks. You're not getting more, he's hit as he's thrown, or he's getting the ball out. He's just barely getting the ball out early. It even felt like the times when you got pressures last year, it wasn't, the quarterback just barely got the ball ahead in time. It was just like he just got the ball out on time, and we were just late getting there, if that makes sense. And when you move it to, we are forcing him to move a little bit earlier than he wants to. We're knocking him off his spot, knocking him off his timing. That's when you create turnovers. That's where Marcus Peters freaking feasts. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure he's going to be thinking about this year, because that's when he's able to see the pressure coming and the play developing, his eyes on the quarterback, the receivers are not. And that's when he's able to get under those passes. That's something that you need when it comes to closing. And you hinted at it already, Ron. So we'll move into kind of the NFL-wide look of things. A couple of things I wanted to know. One, just because this sucked to see, Ryan Jensen went down with a tough injury today. I don't know what the official announcement was on that, but man, as a guy we talked about re-signing a lot this season, and I am like 95% sure the Ravens were at least in talks with him at some point. I think it was Brady unretiring that really drew him away from coming back to Baltimore. But what a great guy, the kind of like fighter in the trenches that you love to see. So, I hope it's, it's probably not going to be good news, but man, I hope it's nothing brutal.
Like Schefter or somebody tweeted that they fear it's something serious. So it's not looking good, but just, prayers up to him, man. Hopefully he's able to come back and be the Ryan Jensen that we've all grown to know and love.
And speaking of injuries in Tampa Bay, they've also signed Julio Jones. So we can complain about that. I think it's so funny. The Bucs are like, Tom Brady has Mike Evans. They just found out Chris Godwin is going to be fine. He's not even on PUP. And they signed Russell Gage in the offseason. And they have Jalen Darden and Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson and Brashad Perriman, who are literally a great collection of depth wide receivers. That's a really good collection of like 3 through 6 wide receivers, or 4 through 6. I'm sorry, with Gage.
Not
enough for Tom Brady. Not enough for Tom Brady. He's coming in for Julio Jones. And the Ravens are like, yeah, that guy who flamed out of who retired from the Packers last August and flamed out of the USFL, we want him. At a certain point, they've committed to the bit so hard. I just respect it. I'm just like, you guys are driving the fans crazy with this. You're announcing Bailey Gaither the day after the Bucs sign Julio Jones and have a third Pro Bowl wide receiver, and you are like, yeah. I'm just like, I love it. I respect it.
It is pretty hilarious. Don't be surprised when they turn around and sign like Dede Westbrook next week too. just to kind of add to things.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I guess, as you mentioned, it kind of puts the Julio to Baltimore rumors to bed, along with some other signings that we've seen in the last couple of days. Carlos Dunlap as well, not to transition us on, but he's another one. I would have loved to have him here, especially with all the aforementioned edge problems we were just talking about. He goes and signs with the Chiefs, so that's that kind of puts that one to rest too. And of course, we have DK Metcalf, who just signed his deal. So pretty much, all these guys that we wanted are no longer available, which is awesome.
I think you saw me cross off the list a little bit when we mentioned Julio Jones. Just cross one off the list, move on to the next one. It's just
McLaurin, DK, they're all gone.
It's like you said, Nikhil. They are so committed to the bit that it's a sheer. I'm just so interested to see, because after Derrick Henry ran over them in the aforementioned 2019 game, they went out, they got Calais Campbell, Derek Wolfe, they built that line back up real quick. After this past season, when the offensive line imploded, they went out, they got Tyler Linderbaum, they found like 4 offensive tackles. They're legitimately like 3 deep, I think, at each offensive tackle position separately. David Sharp, the greatest right tackle of all time, included there. But they really do overcorrect.
They're like 5
mistakes.
deep at right tackle and like 2 deep at left.
It depends on what you count James and Macari as, but
they're interchangeable.
You can make the numbers work. But sure. I like, and I'm trying to think because I'm trying to think of it from their perspective, because they're clearly a team where when it hits the fan because of a certain position group, they are not afraid to go be aggressive with it. And while, yes, we lament the wide receiver position, and while I especially have just been sitting back, just dejected at all times, is there a season it ever truly was the reason for them that their goals were not achieved, or they did not exceed an expectation? And I'm really struggling to come up with the answer. You could say 2019, but 2019, again, both sides of the line of scrimmage got dented in by the Titans' defensive and offensive lines, respectively. 2020, I don't count because that game was played in a windstorm. Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals that game. I don't know. I'm really trying to struggle in the Lamar Jackson era. When have the pass catchers been the reason this team failed, especially in the postseason?
I do have to say, in that 2019 playoff game, I mean,
They were drops. They dropped
about like 1,000.
And even Mark Andrews, it was a tough catch, but right off his hands, bang into Kevin Byard's hands. From that, they were driving right downfield. They couldn't be stopped. From that one miscue on, it was all hell. And then they had that little sliver when Seth Roberts breaks free, and we saw
Hollywood Brown makes a nice catch on the right sideline.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick, I know that I'm shocking you with this conversation because off the record, I've ranted and raved about the wide receiver position long enough and said that we should trade every first-round pick, every draft pick Ricky Williams style, and just go find a guy. But at the end of the day, they're so committed to who they are, and I'm not trying to be a trust the process, the team knows better than you, blah 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 type of person, because I do think if the deal is there, you should go get your deal. But really, the only thing I have is kind of sending Will Fuller the Princess Leia, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope thing. And that's pretty much it. I don't know who else is there right now.
Yeah, I think so. 2 things. I'd say one, being committed to the bit, it tells you that they believe in these guys. And there's I think that there's mental games being played. Obviously, you want your guys to think that you believe in you, so they believe in themselves more and they play better and, yada, yada, yada. But I also think that you don't do that if you're just blowing smoke up their butts. And I think that this team is look, James Proche, you do kind of like to talk a little bit. You love it, but you can do this.
$3.
You can be wide receiver 2 on a playoff team. And I think them telling him that and reinforcing is hey, I don't have to look over my shoulder. I don't have to worry about my place here. I'm going to get my going to get my games. I'm going to get my opportunity this year, and I need to be ready for it. And I think that attitude is kind of, pervaded throughout the wide receiver room. Now, I'm not opposed to them bringing in Fuller. I think Fuller's probably the best option, the most one-for-one replacement for Hollywood on a budget that you could get. But I also think that I don't really think it moves the needle that much. I don't think it is a crazy big addition, or I'm like, oh, this offense is that PFF graphic where it says who's stopping this offense and Will Fuller's the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver. I'm not like, really imagining it that way. So,
well, I think that's more so for me where I'm at with the wide receiver position is I had a thought the other day, and it really put into context both my comfort and concern with the wide receiver position. And my comfort is not the way I view it is not, oh, James Prochet is my number 2 wide receiver or Devin Duvernay is my number 2. They're 2 and 3 because I believe at least one of them, realistically both of them, are NFL level number 3 receivers, and you might find a number 2 in one of them. Sure, why not? The way I look at it though, where the concern is I am one Rashad Bateman injury away from James Prochet and Devin Duvernay being 1 and 2, and that is where the concern. For me personally, is stemming from. Like, that is where I think a Will Fuller, that is where if by the grace of God you convince Odell Beckham to come to Baltimore, you have that someone who's been the dude before. Will Fuller was a dude in Houston for 8 games, and a little bit before that too. Odell Beckham needs no introduction. I think having someone who's used to lining up across from a team's number 1 corner, someone who just has that experience is going to make a real difference in the event the prince that was promised has a tummy ache.
Yeah. And I mean, all the guys you just mentioned, I guess we can just kind of transition into our next topic about some free agent additions we could possibly want, who our favorites would be. And I was just looking down this receiver list today, and like Odell is really the only one that I'd even be keen on. You know what I mean? Like, there's that Fuller, and I would probably throw Emmanuel Sanders in there too, of guys that I'm okay giving them $2 or less million to come in. If they don't work out on a 1 year, whatever. But I would be surprised to see any of those guys come here just because, and not to start this narrative again, but me and Nikhil were kind of talking about it a little bit off screen before the show about Juju in Kansas City and how his base salary, what was it, $3.2 million? With Kansas
that's like
City?
His base deal without any incentives.
Yeah, with no incentives. But we were kind of spitballing as to how much the Ravens would have had to offer to supplement the fact of they're so clearly a run-first offense more than any other team in the league. Where I could see a Will Fuller or Emmanuel Sanders take $1 million to go play in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, as opposed to us offering them $2.5 million to come, be the number 2 to Rashad Bateman.
Well, the fact that these receivers, especially in August, not many of them are looking for semi-medium or even long-term deals. They are looking for prove-it deals. Why would you ever want to prove it in a Greg Roman offense? And that's not an insult to the effectiveness of a Greg Roman offense. I'm not doing this right now, but
the quadri.
But they're coming. You can hear the march. But at the end of the day, if I'm trying, winning a Super Bowl is really cool. Or you can also win a Super Bowl, like you said, Ron, Green Bay, Wisconsin. You got Aaron bleeping Rodgers throwing you the football. You have to beat out Allen Lazard and an injured Christian Watson to be the number 1 target. And it's a very wide receiver friendly offense. And I believe the Greg Roman offense is an NFL caliber offense. I just do not think it's conducive to wide receiver production. So why would you take a prove-it deal in it?
Yeah, and Ron, you mentioned looking at the list. T.Y. Hilton's another name. I think Hilton, Fuller, and Sanders are the 3 main guys left you could think about signing in terms of a kind of lo-fi addition. I'm so curious about the state of Beckham's rehab, because I think I've said this before. The Ravens offense has a little bit of tendency to hit that rut week 10, week 11, whatever it is. And having a guy like Odell Beckham just waltz onto the offense around that time would be kind of perfect. I think that is and be like, okay, Odell, you are a passing weapon. Like, you are not going to be trotting out and doing 30, 40 run blocking snaps a game. You're going to play 25 to 30 snaps a game, and 20 of them are going to be pass plays. Like, you're going to, like, it's going to be a little obvious that we're passing when you're on the field, but you're going to be that guy in passing situations, in 2-minute drills, third and longs, red zone. You need a red zone target, whatever, their touchdown, whatever. That's the kind of impact Odell Beckham Jr. I think could have on this offense. But can we sell him on that kind of role? Can we convince him he doesn't? Is run blocking that big of a deal for him? Who knows? It seems like it is for a lot of these receivers. And so I would say you do that, or you do a super cheap deal and you just have a Hilton or Sanders or a Fuller on the rotation as a guy that you're saying, okay, well, you have more than 1,000. You have more than 515 career yards, which is the most any current Ravens receiver has, and is older than 25, which is the oldest Ravens receiver is. And you feel a little bit better. But I'm not giving like Will Fuller like snaps over James Prochet, at least not to start the season. I want to see what Prochet can do for me, and I think we're just going to see it. I think in terms of the other thing to watch is cut candidates. I think that, like the Bucs are a great example. Like Ron mentioned earlier, they have too many receivers now. Are they going to keep Scotty Miller in the last year of his contract? Rashad Perriman, which
someone find me a Photoshop of Rashad Perriman in a purple and black uniform. I've never seen it once before, and I'm really interested to see what it would look like.
They got Tyler Johnson. The Denzel Mims conspiracy train is starting once again, like it does about this time every year. He will still somehow end up cut, even though he had 1,000 yards in 3 preseason games and 1,200 yards in training camp. But, I think the Ravens are just kind of like, hey, we're just going to wait for that market. We're just going to see what's available in that market, because that market's not going to be crazy different than this one. I think Beckham is the only major piece that could be moved. And again, he's in the situation where he's picking where he's going to do his rehab and, what kind of deal is he going to get? Does he want a multi-year deal? Does he want, he's in a weird spot given the timing of his injury. And so I think that's kind of a tough thing to predict. What you can see is a lot of guys potentially coming available in free agency. Darius Slayton, the Giants have a lot of receivers.
Damn you. I was literally just going to say.
Reading your mind here. Slayton's another one who might come free.
Nikhil's performing his monologue here. I'm just kidding.
Really, you could take a tour of like the NFC East, like their 4th wide receiver on each team, and just try to see what you can get
Philly.
from it. I was saying the Philly is Jalen Reagor, but like God knows what would happen to this fan base.
I've seen a lot of Jalen Reagor to Baltimore trades, sometimes involving Chuck Clark, and I just don't think the people at Bleacher Report really know what they're talking about.
I don't think they understand what my boy Chuck Clark is, and I also don't think they understand that come next season, next offseason, the Eagles are going to be throwing a comically large amount of money at Jesse Bates.
Checks out.
Which is fine. Get that menace to society out of the AFC North.
So, Ron, you mentioned JPP, and I think I'm with you as my top target right now in terms of free agency. Is there anyone you'd even really take a look at? I mean, again, it's just the market is just so thin at this point when you're thinking of player in terms of actual impact players versus, depth guys like you're that are just going to rotate. I mean, I do like Anthony Barr. I don't know what kind of edge rushing, prowess he has left. The other one I'm curious about.
Everybody.
I'm also just curious about D Ford. Like, does D Ford want to, he's made a lot of money not playing a lot the last 3 years. Does he want to make less money this year and play a little bit more maybe and get some more production in on a championship team? I mean, I think that's the card that the Ravens have left to play. I definitely think it's a card they played with Pierre Paul. I don't know. His deals, his visit seemed to go so well. I know they didn't have the cap room to sign him then, but they certainly do now. I got to think that that's incoming. But
I'm interested in, not to stifle over the JPP fest, but Trey Flowers really interests me. Hasn't been healthy for 2 seasons, obviously, but was that 7-sack-a-year guy, like seemingly on schedule for Detroit for a good number of years. And I think that he kind of has a little outside-in versatility that I kind of mentioned before as well, being able to rush over a guard as well as over a tackle. And I think Trey Flowers is someone who is still relatively young. I want to say he's like 28, 29. So good amount of gas in the tank there as well. And I won't pretend I know what the injuries were off the top of my head, but as long as they're not catastrophic like an Achilles or something like that, like I'm willing to kick the tires on it.
Yeah, I mean, all they got to do is check out now. I think you're right. And I think, that's another type of signing where like, hey, this is a guy that we could pay $1 million for, and we will basically pay him for like $200,000 a sack or something like that, which is not really a bad price when you think about it compared to what a lot of these guys are making. So,
yeah, I mean, for me, it's pretty much JPP or bust. Like, I was looking at the list. The only other two guys that I'd even probably like really consider that would even relatively move the needle would be Anthony Barr, who you mentioned, and Carl Nassib. But both of those guys also seem like they're going to sign with, somebody's going to have a pass rusher go down with more money to spend than the Ravens. And like, I know they've got some money, but both of those guys, Barr and Nassib, feel like they would go to a Super Bowl team where somebody goes down. Like, it just, for me, it doesn't feel likely that either of those guys are taken, or let me rephrase that. I don't see the Ravens offering them what they probably think they could get somewhere else, even if it is late in August.
yeah, and I think those guys are just.
Oh no, we lost Nikhil. No worries.
No worries. Going back to Anthony Barr, though, I think the Bobby Wagner interest earlier really makes me wonder the fact that they haven't even, or at least I haven't seen anything that they've sniffed around on Anthony Barr even at all. Like, I think it's really interesting that you were twerking for Bobby Wagner pretty hard. Like, he was getting the ropes. He got the crab gigs. He got everything. And at the end of the day, he just got he got the perfect offer. He got a perfect offer from a Super Bowl winning team. And that's just the way it goes sometimes. And you're not really in at all for Anthony Barr, an athletic linebacker. Similar age, I think. I don't want to confirm that. I don't remember Anthony Barr's age at the top of my head, but similar age.
Well, they do different things too. Barr's on the line of scrimmage, Bobby Wagner's in the middle, so it's a little bit different. But I mean, you brought up the middle linebacker, so there's another guy who I'm kind of interested in terms of the
Dante?
potential trade/cut category, and that's Deion Jones in Atlanta. He's another guy who's kind of dealing with his own injury stuff right now. So good to have you back, Nikhil.
Yeah,
we're talking about Deion Smith.
10%.
Deion Smith. We're talking about Deion Jones. We just kind of transitioned, and we were talking about other like cut potential trade guys.
Yeah, I think
and
that's
he's dealing with a lot of his own injury stuff right now. Arthur Smith said they're hoping to have him back. He's on the PUP, so he can't be traded until he's taken off of it, of course. But I think he would make a lot of sense. I think he would be the perfect complement piece to Patrick Queen and really solidify that pass defense aspect that we've kind of lamented Queen for in the past and have really been missing. So yeah, he's another guy that I'd be super huge on.
Yeah, so sorry, my computer died, but I am back. And I am back to bring up, I think the last thing I wanted to talk about today, just because it's really funny and I just saw it flash across my Twitter feed. This Kyler Murray contract with his clause about studying is just so funny to me because one, clauses in contracts exist not for just any old reason. They exist because one side or the other wanted it in there and they wanted it to be a part of the legal deal that the legally binding deal that the two sides signed, right? It is not like a standard thing or it's like, oh yeah, they just threw it in there. No, it is this deal is void if you don't do your homework, which is really funny to me. And that Kyler even held a like impromptu press conference today to talk about how insulting it was for journalists to talk about it. I'm like, bro, you put a pen in your hand and you put the
You're
pen
mad
to
at the
that
wrong
paper.
people, brother.
Yeah,
like,
you should be mad at
speaking
yourself,
of like the
your
weird
agent, the Cardinals.
Speaking of the weird contracts, like I don't know if you saw for the NBA crowd out there, the Zion Williamson contract apparently has the clause where
The weight clause.
It's like the weird math the weird formula they've invented that Zion's body weight, the sum of his body weight plus his body fat percent cannot exceed the total value of 295. And all I've heard from this is I want Zion to show up at 260, 30,
fat.
260, 30% body fat. That's
I want
it happen.
I want 200 and just like I just want 200, but all of it fat. I think that would be so fun. If he was just like, screw you guys, I'm getting around your silly rule. But apparently, I just saw. Apparently, that language just got taken out today because Kyler,
Really?
yeah. Which
Kyler's
I'm
back.
sorry, like I don't like dislike Kyler. I don't bear any hard feeling towards Hollywood or really anyone in Arizona, but it does not seem like they have all of their stuff together over there. Just like they're going to be in a tough spot this time next year. I guess Hollywood's not demanding a new contract because he hasn't played for them yet, I'm assuming, but they're going to be a tough spot this time next year when he's about to go in his 5th year. And he's like, yeah, remember how DK got 3 years and 72 last year? Yeah, I want like 3 and 75 or whatever the hell. And Kyler, I mean, they did a good job with Kyler's deal. I think they
I think
I
given
think
the
they overpaid
landscape
him a
of it,
little bit.
given the
Sorry.
landscape, I think it's a dub. I think
Yeah,
the
I think
fact
it's a
that they
fine
were able
deal
to
for
stare the
both.
they were able to stare the Deshaun Watson deal in the face and come back to Josh Allen land. And
Yeah,
while it's
and
very
kept the lid
expensive
on quarterback
land,
contracts.
yeah,
It's
they
huge.
they they did
But
they did a service to every other team in the NFL.
but the independent study thing just seems like evidence that there's like less content harmony going on behind the scenes in Arizona than we think. I think there's a lot of pressure on that team this year. I think they're one of the teams that has the most pressure on them in the NFL, honestly. And yeah, I mean, you got to wonder if Hollywood Brown's going to be looking like the grass is still greener this time. Grass is still greener on the other side this time next year. I mean, again, I hope he figures it out. I hope they have much success. You know, they're in the NFC. They don't really bother me. But at the same time, I do think that Hollywood is going to have to, he's going to have to compete a little bit more for snaps and playing time, which he hasn't been used to. And, depending on how everything shakes out over there, I'm very curious to see where the Arizona Cardinals go in the next 4 years, I guess I should say. I just think they've very quickly become one of the most intriguing teams in the NFL because they have committed to this path without any real evidence that it works that well.
Well, my thing is
Yeah.
also Cliff Kingsbury is just kind of here as well. Where Cliff Kingsbury isn't he signed through 2027 as well? So I think Kyler and Kingsbury they might be a year apart. I don't remember how the years exactly on it, but they're basically in this together. And how many people, if we polled the entire NFL landscape right now, how many people genuinely believe in 2026 or 2027 Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury are both on the Arizona Cardinals? I don't. I would not bet my money on that.
I feel like they've committed to the bit, but in a way that is a lot more potentially disastrous for them, where the Ravens are just like, haha, we don't need wide receivers. It's like, okay, whatever. It's a funny bit. And the Cardinals are like, oh, yeah, well, we're going to get Shorty and Mr. Young coach over here who doesn't know how to coach in the NFL and commit to them for the entire decade. It's a bold move, Cotton. We'll see how it works out for them.
I mean, they do have DeAndre Hopkins. Like, he's not going to be there for the first 6 games, but I mean, he's still a top 6, 7 receiver in the game.
I think they could be a great team. I'm just very curious to see if they can actually put together potential this season.
See, it's funny
I don't
because
think so. I think we've seen what we're going to see from this iteration of the Cardinals. They're that one and done. They're the Atlanta Falcons, pre 2016 in the Super Bowl. Remember that, where they were just that team every single year. It's like, yeah, they're going to win the South and they're going to lose in the first playoff game. That's just what I get from them.
Yeah,
you mentioned it before. DeAndre Hopkins, top 6-7 receiver in the NFL, and everyone knows that except Cliff Kingsbury.
I have to be honest. We'll see if that's true this year when he gets back from his suspension. I think that is possible. He's dropped a little bit further in those rankings just because there are a lot of really rising talents in the NFL. A lot of them got paid this offseason. So, well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This was a really great, I think, preview for training camp. And now I'm just super jazzed to be at training camp in the next few weeks and just take in as much of as I can. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's going to be awesome. Follow along with Russell Street Report and RS Replay on Twitter. We've got so much cool stuff going on right now between our articles and this show and all the other podcasts we have. It's a lot of really awesome stuff. So you're going to want to be tuned in.
Training camp is going to be very exciting. Stay tuned. We've got some fun stuff planned. Thayjus, thank you so much for joining us. It was a blast to have you on.
Of course, it was great to be here. I'll close by saying I'll offer a 3rd and 4th round pick for Tyler Lockett. And with that,
hey, I'm so down for that. That's a great way to end the pod.
Cosign.
Sounds good. Future GM right there. Thanks for everyone for tuning in.
Thanks.